In the realm of hungry ghosts. Summary. Part 1. The first section of the book is an introduction to Dr. Mate and the Portland Hotel Society, the nonprofit that he is the physician for. Additionally, he recounts the stories of some of his patients who have most impacted him and discusses how common the themes of poverty, abuse, and pain are in the lives of many of his patients. Part 2. In the second part of the book, Mate begins discussing his own struggles with addiction. He has behavioral addictions characterized by his endless need to buy records, some he already owns, and an insatiable need to keep working despite the toll it may take on his health and his relationships. Part 3. Part 3 initially explores the complications of limiting addiction to a single definition, then spends subsequent chapters describing different biological mechanisms and processes that affect reactions to drug use, such as dopamine receptors, endorphins, and reactions to the environment. The physical changes to the brain's gray matter that occur as a result of long-term drug use are also discussed in this section. Part 4. In Part 4, Mate details how the brain develops in utero and in childhood can determine if a person will suffer from addiction later in life, explaining how trauma and stress during these pivotal moments can affect your response to stress for your entire life. Genes only play a minuscule role in this.
Summary continued. Part 5. Part 5 of the novel details the need to avoid the feelings of emptiness brought about in the addict's childhood. Addicts suffer from the inability to self-regulate their emotions, turning to drugs to do so. Sadly, addiction is almost always a way for the addict to substitute love they were unable to feel during infancy. Part 6. The sixth part of the novel has Mate discussing the social roots of addiction, with some addiction, gambling, smoking cigarettes, etc., being deemed acceptable by society. Sexual abuse being an almost guarantee one will turn to substances. And also, how the war on drugs has failed and essentially guaranteed suffering for victims of drug addiction, and relegated them to the bottom of the social hierarchy. However, there is hope if social policy is changed to undo the war on drugs effects and implementing a system that promotes harm reduction. Part 7. The final part of In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts adopts a very spiritual approach to addiction, as Mate discusses different ways to cope with addiction through the lens of various philosophies, programs, and Buddhism. One of the main points is the suggestion to turn a compassionate curiosity towards oneself to get the root of addictive behaviors without being judgmental or enabling. Additionally, Mete goes through the four-step self-treatment method: relabel, reattribute, refocus, revalue, and a step of his own invention, recreate. Conflicts and resolutions with theories. One of the main topics of the book is how stress in early life and later life has forced the addict to cope through external means, i.e., drugs or behavioral addictions. This stress usually first occurs in infancy in parental absence. Even if the parent is physically present but emotionally unavailable, the baby can feel this absence known as proximal separation. As a result, children exposed to a lot of proximal separation are at greater risk for seeking chemical satisfaction from external sources later in life. Those suffering addiction experience the most common triggers for stress the most: uncertainty, isolation, loss of control, and conflict. This connects to what we learned about stress during the semester. When stress hormones are constantly coursing through your body your entire life, all sorts of aspects of brain function are impaired. Those suffering from drug addiction are attempting to give their brains relief from feeling this never ending feeling of fear and assault on their biological functions. Conflicts and Resolutions with Theories, Part 2. In later chapters of the book, Mate discusses how the addict is essentially an outcast of society that has been forced to the bottom of the social and moral scales, rejected as a person, and forced into the exact circumstances that will keep them dependent on drugs. The only way to get them to change is to give them an island of relief that shows them that esteem, acceptance, love, and humane interaction are realities. The only way to do this is by giving them an alternative community, giving a sense of belonging, being wanted, and purpose. This can be connected to what we learned about social capital. Social capital can be beneficial in instances where groups can maintain social norms as there are others around to call out bad behavior. Those suffering from drug addiction have no social capital available to them other than those providing them with things to feed said addictions. Giving the addict social capital is key in helping them shed their addiction.
Conflicts and resolutions with theories. Part 3. Medicalization is another aspect of medical sociological theory that is influential on the topic of drug addiction. In the United States, drug addiction has been criminalized rather than medicalized, which has created a system that does not benefit or prioritize the health and healing of the addict. The number of people incarcerated due to nonviolent drug charges is staggering, which has a high financial cost as well as a high cost of human suffering. The medicalization of drug addiction offers more effective methods for improving the health of addicts. Entering addicts into rehab centers as opposed to prison creates better societal outcomes and also takes a more realistic and compassionate approach to addiction, as Dr. Mate urges in The Realm of Hungry Ghosts.
The significance to medical sociology. In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, Significance to Medical Sociology. This book provides insight about how the current system of drug prevention and treatment we have in the United States, as well as the one in Canada, where Dr. Mate practices, is a complete and utter failure, largely because of a tragic misunderstanding of the complexity of addiction and a fundamental lack of empathy for addicts. We demonize people suffering from true impairments to their decision making and other necessary brain functions, and try to force our ideals onto them. We must create programs and study those suffering from addiction using a practical approach that helps the addict, not hinders them. If we look at addiction from a medical sociological approach, we can create systems that allow those suffering addiction to receive the help and support they need, instead of forcefully punishing them and putting them in environments that will only promote their addictions. Thank you for watching. This has been Anthony Oughton and Dara Holloman's presentation on In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts.